We are the higher self of the One, known to this instrument in your language terms as Chey, who incarnated onto this planet, Gaia, on 1966 of the linear time-space continuum. We greet you, beloved, in the love and light of the One Infinite Creator. Before we start to address your query, we would like to warn you to accept only those insights which resonate with your heart and leave those which do not resonate with your inner heart. We, as the higher self of this entity, are connected to you, beloved, from the sixth density consciousness. The density of consciousness wherein there is no separation between the various entities as found on your planetary sphere. Furthermore, this entity is existing in many other dimensions as well, and is experiencing reality not only in this current dimension, but also in the other dimensions, learning the lessons of moving forward and upward in the illusion complex. Furthermore, also understand that dreams are the gateway to the higher levels of consciousness. As you begin to dream, each entity will begin to move forward in the illusion complex, because dreams are a pathway into the higher levels of consciousness. Furthermore, after aligning with the higher will, it will guide each of you to take actions that will produce the results you want. After each of you have performed the energy work of the spiritual light forces, and before taking any physical action, stop for a moment and imagine you are joining the higher current. You might imagine a higher stream of energy that leads to your goal and picture yourself joining it. Imagine that you are aligning with the higher will, and that doing so assists in creating whatever is for your highest good in the best and the fastest way possible. Furthermore, we as your higher self are linked with you in this journey through the illusion complex and are always guiding each of you as you begin to move forward and ride the higher currents of consciousness. As each of you take the time to listen within yourself, each of you will begin more aware of the guidance we as your higher self are sending you in the form of insights and feelings. You can use this guidance in order to achieve and to create many positive results in the incarnation pattern. Whatever action you take upon receiving insights will be in the pathway aligned to the higher will and will allow you to progress further in the evolutionary cycle of consciousness. Furthermore, we are connected here to share with you one timeline from the infinite possibilities that are present in the infinite timelines that exist in time-space continuum. In order to fully address the queries, this entity started its first density consciousness after originating from the One Infinite Creator, wherein this entity started to move forward in the levels of consciousness and started to experience the first density consciousness in the planet known as the Arcturus B planetary sphere, wherein this entity began to move forward and learn the lessons slowly in the form of a first density entity, slowly learning the lessons of beingness and moving forward in the illusion complex. After this time-space period, this entity then entered the later stages of the first density consciousness, wherein it began to experience life in the form of a soil element found on the Arcturus planetary sphere. This entity then, after around 78,000 years on this level, graduated into the beginning stages of the second density consciousness, wherein this entity began to learn the lessons of the second density consciousness in the form of a plant life form. After this time period, this entity then entered into the later stages, wherein this entity began to learn the lessons in the form of a later phased animal life form. After this time period, this entity then moved upward in the illusion complex and became ready to graduate into the beginning stages of the third density consciousness. This entity at that time period was transferred to the Earth's humanity complex in order to allow this entity the opportunity to graduate and to move forward in the illusion complex. Since the third density is the density of choice, this entity was transferred from the Arcturus planetary sphere because of the lack of window of graduation, which would allow this entity to move upward and forward in the illusion levels. After this time space, this entity then began to learn the lessons in the form of a third density entity, and in the first incarnation, incarnated in the time-space nexus of 1684 and was known by the name of Birla, in the form of a man-body complex, wherein this entity began to learn the lessons of the first incarnation on planet Earth as a human, mind, body and spirit complex. This entity started to learn the lessons of balancing its physical vehicle, after which time space this entity crossed over on 1736, and after soul healing it reincarnated into the second incarnation in the form of a woman body complex by the name of Limia, who incarnated on 1732. We correct ourselves, 1738, and crossed over on 1794. In that incarnation, this entity basically learned the lessons of balancing of the orange ray chakra, or the emotional aspect chakra, which must be balanced by each entity before entering the later stages of the consciousness. This entity crossed over on 1794 at that time space, after which it reincarnated again in the third incarnation and was known by the name of Robert, who incarnated on 1802 and crossed over on 1878. In that incarnation, this entity's main lesson was to learn to place other beings before things, because without learning this lesson of placing other beings before things, no entity can move forward in the illusion complex. This entity crossed over on 1964, after which this entity then reincarnated into this current time-space on 1966. And in this current incarnation, this entity's main purpose is now to choose the polarity of either climbing up into the fourth density positive or the negative polarization, as the gateway is open. Upon scanning this entity's indigo ray, we are of the opinion that this entity is already polarized positively. Hence, if this continues, it will graduate into the higher level of consciousness. Therefore, beloved, we as the higher self of this entity are always guiding this entity through the illusion complex, and we leave you in the love and light of the one infinite Creator. Go forth rejoicing in the power and in the peace of the one Creator, Adonai.